Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Game of Thrones podcast. I'm your host, Carmine of Red Team Review, and I'm joined here once again by Mr. Preston Jacobs. He's back, finally.
I'm back. My voice hasn't recovered yet, but I'm doing the best I can.
I will say there have been some rumors floating out there that you weren't really out sick. You instead were out destabilizing southeastern nations. I may or may not have been behind that. Maybe we'll see. On a mission.
Of course I am. I mean, there was the secret CIA mission of being in bed sick for a week and then having my voice be unable to really talk for many days. That's the I don't know what mission we're going for there, but we can have a Jason Bourne movie about that.
That's the usual secret agent excuse. But guys, as always, we're available on SoundCloud and YouTube, but unfortunately not iTunes or Spotify right now. There's been some technical issues on their end, and I've been told it'll be back up soon. So for now, you'll have to bear with us here a little bit on YouTube and SoundCloud. But yeah, as always, leave your thoughts down below. We may cover it in the next episode. Whew. Okay, so Preston, the finale to House of Le Dragoon.
So House of the Dragon season finale.
I always have to defend you in the comment sections, mine and yours, because people always say that you're old and grumpy, and I'm always in there saying Preston is not old.
But you're saying I'm very grumpy.
Well, the one thing I always try to do, at least for my review videos, is I try to be as fair as possible, because even a bad episode can have some really good stuff in there, and vice versa. And I feel like this one, despite it not being good, it had some things you could like in there.
No, there's stuff to like. I mean, like I said, the show is beautiful costumes, very well directed, very well acted, but at the same time, like, I just don't think there's any connection between scenes. Like, the writers forget what happened in the previous episode, and they just don't plan out season arcs well. They're going episode by episode rather than going like, how does this season fit together in an arc? And so that's what I fundamentally think is the problem with this season, and really to a lesser extent season 1 too.
Well, here's the thing though. Someone just sent me an article just now about how the director of episode 8 doesn't know where Otto is. According to her, she said, I was asked to shoot that scene. I want to know where he is too. I don't know. Those guys talk about a lot of things in the writer's room and then they don't tell us. They don't tell any of us. They don't tell the actors either. I don't think it's fair. So it's quite clear that there are people on this whole project who are not talking to each other, who should kind of be talking to each other.
Yeah, and there is a lot of and this was a problem with season 1 as well, the communication issues. I mean, the big famous one that we bring up all the time is the fact that Emily Carey and Millie Alcock had planned that they had planned that there was lesbian tension between Rhaenyra and Alicent, and they talked about this and they had inserted that in how they acted the scenes, and the audience very much picked up on this. That wasn't communicated to Olivia Cook and Emma Darcy, and so it's not as prevalent in those in their scenes between those actors, and that's kind of a big deal, like that's or just, ridiculous things like never really resolving what happened with Kristen Cole at the end of episode 5 and just doing a time skip and just somehow he's not arrested or beheaded or whatever, and there's, they write an episode or they deal with things at certain parts of the season and then they just kind of forget about it and they don't plan it for the rest. And it's a shame because there's so much hard work and great acting in each individual scene. Like, things are beautiful, but they fundamentally should connect. And I say, like, the big problem that I see with the finale is Daemon was making a decision of whether, because it established in episode 8 that Daemon was in control of the Riverlands army and had to decide if he wanted to use the Riverlands army for himself or kneel to Rhaenyra. But episode 7 was specifically the opposite of that. Oscar Tully made it very clear that he was bending the knee to Rhaenyra, despite just absolutely loathing Daemon, and all the other River Lords loathed Daemon. So both of those scenes were beautiful. The Oscar Tully scene at the werewood was a beautiful, tense scene, and the scene where Daemon is with all of the people in Harrenhal in the main hall and kneels to Rhaenyra is a beautiful scene.
Great scene.
But those are two beautiful scenes, independent, beautiful scenes, and they are completely incongruent. They do not make sense next to each other. There is a serious communication error between episodes 7 and 8. And, if you're just taking the scene for the scene, yeah, it's a great scene, but it narratively makes no fucking sense. Like, you would have to agree with me on that, on specifically the Oscar Tully to like Daemon's position in episode 8. Like, it's fundamentally does not make any sense. There's no connection.
I don't disagree. You're right. Also, why wasn't Oscar Tully the head general of this army, of this portion of these forces? Why isn't he there? Why? Where was the actor?
I know.
He's supposed to be at Harrenhal.
Right.
Real quick before we continue on, I need to ask you: do you want to get into the episode, or do you want to get into the everything around the episode? Because after let's do it kit and caboodle, man. Let's do it all. What you got? What you got to talk about? I'm ready for it all. So first and foremost, we have spoken ad nauseum about Daemon and that whole situation.
Yes.
You've made it very clear where you stand, but this is the podcast. People may not have seen that video on my channel. This is going to be on your channel. So your whole thing with why that scene did not make any sense, the vision thing, is that you believe it removes agency from Daemon and it goes against everything George R. Martin writes about. Can you go into more detail on this?
Sure. I mean, this season had began with Rhaenyra and Daemon having a little tiff, and she questions whether or not Daemon supports her. He then flies off to Harrenhal, and it's kind of his like man cave moment, right? He's trying to do his own thing. Daemon's doing his own thing, but Alice is making Daemon face his inner demons, right? And correct me if you're interpreting the plot different. So he is each night on that werewood exploring his own mind and trying to determine for himself if he's loyal to himself or he's loyal to Rhaenyra. That's clearly the arc for Daemon this season. So he has a vision about Rhaenyra and how he keeps getting her into trouble. He has a vision about his mother and his insecurity about being the favorite or not the favorite. And then he has a scene with Viserys where Viserys talks about how he never wanted the crown. Daemon is exploring all of his demons. He's facing them, and he needs to make a decision in the end. And then in the end, he's unable to make a decision for himself because he receives a prophecy that says the world is going to end unless Rhaenyra is on the throne. He sees Rhaenyra on the throne. He sees the White Walkers. He sees dragons. He all of a sudden is a true believer in the Song of Ice and Fire.
He sees dead dragons, which is supposed to push him even further. Because remember, his whole thing last season was dreams didn't make us kings, dragons did.
Right. So he is that entire arc, the 7 episodes, is all of a sudden that decision is taken from him. Like, he has just seen a prophecy. And in fact, even before the vision, like Alice Rivers says that, you believe in your own choices, but here's the prophecy. And it's such a very weird thing to have a character who is supposed to make a decision for himself suddenly have that stripped from him, and he's just a puppet. He's a puppet of the prophecy. She could have given him that prophecy the first thing, and he would have come to the same conclusion.
Well, well, people were saying, to counter that, people have been saying that Daemon, this is the one counter to this that I do agree with. The one counter is, if the moment Daemon got there and she gave him that vision on the offset, he would have brushed it off. He was too arrogant. These visions were sort of training or trial, if you will, to get him ready to see the real big one at the very end.
I don't know. I mean, you see a vision that powerful? And some people, they argue, there's also argument as well that that he would have thought the prophecy was about himself. But the vision clearly has Rhaenyra on the throne. Like it's very clear that is in there. And if we're just White Walkers, maybe there'd be something, but it's not. It's very specific. It shows it all. Rhaenyra on the throne, dragons, eggs, like White Walkers, war.
By the way, I do want to make this very clear to the audience before we continue on, is that I do agree with you 100%, but I want to play devil's advocate here for the sake of conversation and for the sake of trying to, again, represent the other side of this whole situation fairly, because that's what they're saying. But Alice is clearly working for a higher power, and I guess in her mind, she needed to break Daemon down a bit to the point where he's actually asking her for help, which he never would have done when he first got there. And then after she's broken him down with all these visions, all these tripping on shroom things, then she can give him the big one where he's finally susceptible to the whole thing. He can actually take it in and possibly
But after receiving a vision of fucking his mom, he's suddenly just totally game for like visions.
I guess all the visions together, even the mom fucking one, had to like break him down enough to where he lets his guard down and lets Alice show him the final one, the final test, I guess you could say.
They like going in and seeing like Rhaenyra sewing the head back on Jaehaerys and having a vision of fucking his mom and having a vision of him cutting off Rhaenyra's head. Like, how does that soften him? I mean, see, once you actually examine it, these like abstract excuses like don't really hold water once you actually like sit there and go, and how is that? Like Carmine, say I'm Alice Rivers, okay, and say Carmine, I'm trying to convince you something small. I'm trying to convince you to go on vacation to Idaho. And you're like, fuck, Preston, I don't want to go on vacation to Idaho. And I go, okay, well, you know what? Here's a vision of you fucking your mom. And now here's a vision of you having a great time in Idaho. Like, how does one lead to the other?
I get what you're saying in regards to the visions. My whole thing is this. If you want to show him the vision, okay, fine, whatever. I still think it's dumb and unnecessary. Switch it. Have him swear fealty to Rhaenyra before he sees it. Because that should be the final test, if you think about it. The whole thing, Alice is showing him all these visions to get him...
Make the decision his.
Exactly.
Make the decision his.
Alice is showing him all these visions to get him to have some character development. Because, like I said in my review, Daemon is an asshole, and he is stubborn. He is not going to all of a sudden grow the fuck up. Through magical means, all this other stuff, all these dreams, all this tripping on shrooms, that's how you get him to come to the realization that he needs to be the father, the brother, and the partner that he should have always been. This is how you do it, and I think it worked. However, I believe his final test should have been him seeing all these visions, and then, when confronted with her again, that's when he has to make his choice. And then he kneels, and there you go, he graduates. And then Alice can give him the vision.
Then he can get the vision. Yeah, that all works. But the choice has to be his. I mean, and this is very basic, like screenplay 101, like Act 1, the protagonist is riding high, and then Act 2, there's a dark period where there's soul searching, and then there's resolution. He makes a choice and he comes into Act 3. Like this is very, very basic, like screenplay 101. And the fact that they can fuck that up and be like, okay, Daemon goes into his dark place where he's soul searching, and then he has divine intervention coming in. And that's literally what it is. It is fucking divine intervention. It's like an old Greek play where just the gods come in and save everybody. And that is what happened with Daemon. The gods came in and saved him and made him a true believer. It's the worst. I could not think of a worse like thing to put in the episode. I think that it was put in because the writers fundamentally don't know what the fans want. They think the fans are like Star Wars fans who are, and Star Wars fans aren't even like Star Wars fans. They think that they're just looking for little member berries, like fantasy porn of like, oh my gosh, it's a green man. Oh my gosh, it's the Isle of Faces. Oh my gosh, that's Blackfire. Oh my God. Like, you know, they're just like looking for these little things like, oh my gosh, that's from the book. Oh, it's Bloodraven's birthmark. Oh gosh. Like they think that that's going to be enough. And that by throwing in prophecy, someone's sitting there like chatting out going, oh my God, it's the fucking White Walkers. And then it's Dany and the Pyre. And oh, it's prophecy. I mean, and that's the thing is fantasy shit as well. Like, oh, fantasy kids. They love prophecy and shit, don't they? Prophecy. They love that. They eat it up. Prophecy.
I'm glad you mentioned prophecy because I saw a few content creators try to defend the whole prophecy vision thing with the White Walkers by saying prophecy was always part of A Song of Ice and Fire, and Daemon seeing that vision fits in line with the series. We had this discussion privately on Facebook, and if you want to tell the audience,
yeah, I think if you think that prophecy is a major theme of Ice and Fire, you're missing the fucking point. You're missing the other half of it. It's not that prophecy is the thing. It's the theme of free will versus determinism is a major theme of Ice and Fire. All of the characters, are wrestling with free will versus determinism. And in Ice and Fire, we are not sure which prophecies are true, if any prophecies are true, if all the prophecies are true, if these prophecies are sent by puppet masters, if they exist in and of themselves to show the future. Are they time travel? Are they manipulation? Are they trying to get people to do what the prophecy says? Are they trying to get people to do the opposite of what the prophecy says? We don't know the nature of the prophecies. The problem with this scene with Daemon is we 100% know that the prophecy is true because we saw fucking Game of Thrones. Okay? So there's no question of the nature of prophecy and if there's validity to it. And there's also not the debate of prophecy versus free will. We know that there's no free will here. We know that it's all determined. Because we know exactly what's going to happen to Daemon, and we know exactly what's going to happen at the God's Eye, and we know how it's all going to lead to Game of Thrones and Arya jumping out of the fucking tree. Okay? Like, we know all that.
Wait, Arya jumped out of a tree?
To kill the Night King or whatever.
Oh, I thought she just like ran really quickly and then jumped up. And
maybe I don't
remember.
Who fucking cares? Who fucking cares?
Last time you were saying how what happened with the whole Daemon vision thing, it goes against George's works.
It goes against George's work. It's like, keep in mind that George is an atheist. He's a lapsed Catholic, as he describes himself. He believes in free will. He believes in choice and change. It's a very important theme for him. He is not like into determinism. In fact, I mean, you can look at his other books. You can look at the end of the Armageddon Rag. The end of Armageddon Rag is a story about a person who's seeing prophecies about the end of the world and then just decides to change it because he has free will to do so. You know, the Fever Dream is about people who believe that, who are dealing with the entire like racist system of slavery and are trying to decide that no, things need to change. Like we have the ability to change things. We have the ability to change the future for the better. All right. Like determinism, like that, this idea that everything is hopeless and we're just players that have no choices. It's just, it just doesn't meld with anything that George writes. And I understand that, like, you know, people are like, how does this meld with Ice and Fire? Isn't Ice and Fire filled with prophecy? And you have to say, is it? Because the Bran story is all about like Mira sitting there saying that Jojen is an idiot for being fatalist and just thinking that he's going to die. And Cersei talking to Qyburn about the prophecies that she had and whether she could change them. Or, or Jaime deciding for himself how he's going to fill that page in the White Book. Like it is the Ice and Fire is so dripping with the concept of free will, that having Daemon lose all of his free will and submit to a prophecy that we know as viewers is unchangeable is just ridiculous.
So I got to give shout out to my boy Jurgen here, Patreon member. Shout out to him. He put it brilliantly. He says here, prophecy, whenever it comes up in A Song of Ice and Fire, is generally cause for introspection in the characters. It also leads to personal or interpersonal conflicts. It's not just an external variable. For example, Stannis hearing the prince that was promised prophecy doesn't just change his mind and actions, but it fuels conflict between him and his brother, which makes him question the bonds that he had with Renly and also Robert. In contrast, the prophecy Daemon experiences is almost entirely external to him and drives essentially no personal or interpersonal conflict. After all, what do the White Walkers mean to him? Sure, they're a threat, but what do the White Walkers mean to him, to Daemon? The answer is nothing. The prophecy could have been replaced with any other disaster that would soon hit Westeros. A famine, a fire, a flood, a plague. It would have made no difference to introducing the threat of the Walkers, which raises the question, why was it there? Jurgen here believes that it's a lazy substitute itself for a character arc that focuses on Daemon doing introspection.
That's really well put. That's really well put. And I'd even add, it's worse than that in that it resolves all the conflicts. He's right that the prophecy creates conflict in Ice and Fire, and here in House of the Dragon, it resolves all the conflicts.
The other thing I wanted to bring up super quick, while we're on the topic of Daemon, is Helaena coming out of the fucking blue, and all of a sudden, she feels someone in your comment section. I love this. I'm trying to find it right here. Someone in your comment section said, "Why do you guys think Helaena projected herself into Daemon's dream? Because she's wearing the same fucking clothes." Yeah.
Yeah.
She's wearing the same clothes. This other person here said, Helena's abilities are so inconsistent. Before, she only got vague feelings. I'm afraid of the rats. And now she has precise visions and can attack Titan her way into Daemon's mind.
Right.
Which,
she went from being patch face to being Varys in like immediate like with her eloquence. I was going
to say the Brand 9000 because that's kind of what she is now. She's literally, she knows everything that's going to happen and is telling people actively what's going to happen in their future.
She before she had a bunch of like insane little bits of knowledge here and there, which didn't really have any effect on the story because they were cryptic and everybody kind of ignored them, much like Patchface. Like readers, it's entertaining for the reader, it's entertaining for the watcher because we kind of have other ideas and we can talk about, we can debate and talk about them, like what it means when Patchface is like, under the sea we ride seahorses or whatever, or when Helaena says, there's a beast beneath the boards or whatever. We get to debate that, but the characters in the story, like, it doesn't really affect them because it's gibberish, right? She changes, like she has a complete personality change, complete and utter personality change to all of a sudden somebody that's very cogent, that knows exactly what her visions mean. And by the way, Helaena has no relationship with Daemon. None.
She should hate him.
She should, considering that, like, depending on how much she knows, but like Daemon, like, did request that somebody go in and kill Aemond, her brother, and if they didn't find Aemond, kill somebody else, and they went and killed her son. Where the fuck did her daughter go?
They mention her. They mention her daughter, like, in passing. I thought Helaena was pregnant again, but no, they're talking about Helena's daughter, Jaehaera.
She just disappeared. But it's complete and utter, like, change of personality, and it doesn't make any sense. Like, why would Helaena be talking to Daemon? Why? Like, what's the point?
I mean, he needs to know his part in the story, which is like weird meta commentary kinda, and I don't know why it's in here.
But here's also the other thing is that like their part in the story is so like to even think about the part in the story, because the part in the story, like if we're talking about stopping the others, okay, which is about mostly Arya jumping in and killing the Night King and the actions of Bran, the dragons play such a small role. They essentially bring down the wall. They, you know, like you have to, so like, and then you go all the way back and you're like, okay, so it's really important that Daemon, you and Aemond fight over the God's Eye and die, so that 2 of the many dragons, the 17 dragons, all die out, and then that there's no dragons, and then that Dany births them later, and then takes those dragons up like north of the wall, so that the Night King can then burn down the wall and come forward, and then immediately get stabbed by Arya. Right? Like that's, and so it's really important, Daemon, that I project myself at this moment to talk about how you need to support Rhaenyra.
What also doesn't make any sense is if next season Aemon's going to be at Harrenhal and he's going to have this relationship with Alice Rivers, she's probably going to do the same thing to him. Give him visions, probably give him the White Walker vision. How come if they both, hypothetically, if that happens, if they both have the White Walker vision, can't they just realize maybe we should put this fight aside and just prepare? Why do we need the conflict then? I'm trying to like find any logic to it all. Like maybe, like what if the visions are all sent by the Night King, and the Night King is trying to kill off dragons, and you're trying to do mental gymnastics to make it fit.
Right, but the problem is that all the visions lead people to unity ideas. So it'd be one thing if he was like sending visions to the different sides to create conflict, but there are all these unity visions.
Well, I'm glad you're bringing this up, because now I want to get into Alice Rivers, because I asked you this during the live stream, and I'll ask it to you again. Alice Rivers is either a Melisandre-esque figure where she's an agent for a higher power, in this case the Three-Eyed Raven, or the Three-Eyed Raven is a title handed down by people with extraordinary power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's one of the two. And where do you stand with Alice Rivers? Because I have my own idea about why they changed the character so much, which I'll go into later. But where do you think we are with Alice? Like, who is this character?
The writers don't fucking know. The writers have no fucking clue. I'm saying,
you know what I'm talking about, right? It's quite clear that the reason I bring this up is because in the visions we see a different Three-Eyed Raven. We see the actual canonical character of Bloodraven.
Bloodraven, yeah.
But in Game of Thrones, the show,
who is not born yet. Yes, who has not been born yet.
Right,
yes.
But in Game of Thrones, the show, it's clearly not Bloodraven. It's some other old guy in a tree. So
maybe. I mean, who knows? It might be like the throne with the swords or whatever, or that it just, you know, they're going to change it. That was Bloodraven the whole time. I don't know. I'm not convinced that the thread Raven that Bran talks to is not Bloodraven.
Okay.
You know, it could be. It's just he just didn't have the birthmark. That's all. He got it lasered off, or they just setting wise didn't have it on him. You know.
I don't understand why they couldn't just put the thing on Max von Sydow.
If the Eyrie can change forms 3 times, and
that's a good point.
The Iron Throne can have swords disappear, like the birthmark can look different. Come on.
And the green men that Daemon saw, we actually during one of behind the scenes videos, we see here that they're very Children of the Forest like.
They're very Children of the Forest. That's the way they went. Now, of course, we've discussed like the idea of like what the green men are. There's I think a pretty good fan theory that they're human beings with weirwoods like grafted to their foreheads, with weirwood branches grafted to their foreheads. I think that's a pretty cool idea. Having them be Children of the Forest characters, I don't know. I mean, I guess you could go that way. I don't know what it adds. Like, them being a different species or whatever. Here's the thing is like fans have been trying to make sense of like George's plot for decades now. And I don't know if George has made sense of his own plot. Like, I don't know if George knows what the Green Men are. I don't know if George can reconcile time traveling Bran with history and all sorts of things. Like as fans, we do our best. I don't think Ryan Condal or the crew of House of the Dragon has come up with anything that's cohesive as any fan theory I've heard. And keep in mind, there exists no fan theory that explains everything neatly, because I don't think George knows what's going on. I certainly don't think that the House of the Dragon's writer's room has come up with some sort of cohesive idea that makes sense. I don't believe it. Considering that we are talking about a plot that involves prophecy, time travel, visions, green men, children of the forest, like ice zombies, the others, dragons. Like, I just think that they're throwing about a bunch of stuff from the book that people will go, ooh, that's from the book, and just leaving it, Because like in Game of Thrones, we never found out about like, what was the deal with the White Walkers' language? It was never answered. What's the deal with the time travel? Why was that even in there? Never answered.
Do the White Walkers ever speak in Game? I know in the books they're like language, isn't it like chattering ice?
I think there's a screech at the end of season 2 with Sam Tarly.
The White Walker general randomly yelling. I wouldn't say that's like really much speech. It's just him yelling.
Yeah. No, I mean in the books they talk. What their language is cracking ice. Yeah, it sounds like cracking ice.
So,
but no, I don't think they have a good idea. I don't think they have anything like cohesive or anything. I don't think George told them anything either, because I don't even know if George has figured it out. I think George mystery boxed the Isle of Faces and the Green Men and was like, I will figure out what that's all about later, and has not come up with anything.
The one thing I also wanted to bring up was I really enjoyed the last couple of minutes of this episode. A lot of people wanted to say that
the montage.
The montage, I really liked it. I thought the ending song was great, mashing all the house themes together, and then towards the very end, when Alicent is overlooking the sunset, I thought it was... Overall, that song was amazing. The montage was pretty good, too. However, Ryan Condal seems to have this weird obsession with getting Rhaenyra and Alicent in the same room. I feel as though in episode 3 was very unnecessary, but according to him here, he said in an interview, this was not in the book, but it's not in the book because that would never be on historical record. So he also said here that they had Alicent and Rhaenyra reunite the season because everyone wanted to see that. Did we? I don't.
Did we? I think they're blowing their loads like too much with Alicent and Rhaenyra. Like, look, I think that So I've seen a lot of criticism of how the way the season ended. A lot of people thinking that the season was slow. I was talking to some casuals today in the office about it and what they thought, and all the casuals were like, second half of the season was pretty slow, and then it ended with like building up to these battles that didn't happen. I thought one of those battles was going to happen, and I was like, yep.
This is something a lot of people kept saying. It was a 70-minute trailer for season 3. I disagree with that. I feel as though the last 5 minutes was that, the montage specifically, but
we kind of know that this was the fault of HBO cutting this season short to 8 episodes.
This is something I've been saying all season.
Yeah, they couldn't. I think when you and I started our predictions on what season 2 would be about, and I think most people had these similar predictions. This is nothing genius, okay? But you essentially have 2 ways that you can possibly end the season. You either end it with Rhaenyra taking King's Landing, which would mirror season 1, in which season 1 ends with Rhaenyra at a low point, Season 2 ends with Rhaenyra on a high point, and then you can end with Rhaenyra and Alicent finally meeting again when she retakes King's Landing. You can build up all of that tension of Rhaenyra and Alicent haven't seen each other, and you end with it. Boom! She takes King's Landing, and the two, like, you end the season with them having a conversation and Rhaenyra being on the throne. That's a beautiful way that you could have ended season 1.
So I convinced you. From the stream the other day, like how I would have ended it would have had been Rhaenyra flying on Dragonback, literally at a high point, because she started the season at a low point. However, because I know you originally wanted, because on stream you said you wanted to end the season at the Gullet.
Well, that's the other thing. If you want to extend things out, because maybe that's too far into the plot. The other way you go is season 1 ends with the death of Luke. Season 2 ends with the death of Jace. And you can have that parallel situation of like Rhaenyra like having this glorious moment, her being crowned, and then having a tragedy. Rhaenyra having another glorious moment. Maybe she hears about a great victory in war somewhere, or she's very proud of the fact that all the dragon seeds have like gotten together, and then she has the death of her son at the end, and she gets that second blow. But the idea is that I think both of those moments are logical places to end the season. Either Rhaenyra takes King's Landing or the Battle of the Gullet. I think both would work.
That's been my idea the entire time, and I thought that's what they were going to do, because once again, opening scene, low point, ending the season on a high point, her taking King's Landing, and you also end the scene, you end the entire season on her on the throne looking at the screen, just like how she ended season 1.
Sure. Or alternatively, you have this low point of her crying over the death of Luke, and then you have this low point of her crying over the death of Jaehaerys, and you see what this war is doing to her slowly. Like both ideas I think work, and fans generally thought this is what one would do. It's obvious, and I probably that's originally how the writers did write season 2, but the problem is HBO came in and was like 8 episodes, and they're like, fuck, what do we do now? We do a montage. And so the montage, look, it's the lemonade they made with the lemons, okay? I don't think it was horrible. I think that the montage was the best they could fucking do with the lemons that HBO gave them by cutting their season from 10 to 8. So, I get it, but it's too bad. It's really too bad that HBO did that to them. But they did their best with that montage. The montage I have no problem with. Okay. The montage is the best you can do. But Rhaenyra meeting Alicent, that was fucking stupid. Like fucking just stop with the Rhaenyra meeting Alicent thing. Like Alicent didn't do anything the whole season, or the things she didn't react to. Like they tried to have her, they shoved her in the middle of Blood and Cheese, and it made no difference. They shoved her in the middle of Rook's Rest, causing Aegon to go out, and it didn't do anything. Like, she didn't feel guilty about either of those things. She felt upset that she was getting cast aside, and she ends the season agreeing to have her son beheaded. Like, what fucking human being would do that?
Well, it's also so we could have had that bit of symbolism at the end, right? Or at least that's what people online have been pushing. It's Alicent, who has been living her whole life, doing what she's been told, doing what's been expected of her. She's finally free, and, she's out in the open, above the open sky, finally free. Her husband is dead, her father's gone, she has no power anymore, and her final scene, overlooking the sunset, free to make her own choices, which she did, while Rhaenyra's final moments is the camera closing in on her through that little cubbyhole with all the scrolls in place around her. It's meant to show us that while Alicent is free, Rhaenyra is not, and is now a slave to the prophecy, the task, and all the history which the scrolls are supposed to represent. She has to do this one thing. She has this one purpose, and she can't do anything else.
That's fucking stupid. She's not free. She has 4 children who are still alive. Okay, she's not fucking free. Like, what is it? This is so fucking stupid. Like, does she not Does she not have any investment in like any of her children's lives? And what is that? Does that make me like Alicent? Like, I don't understand. This makes me like Aegon more, because Aegon was at least upset when his son died, you know, and wanted action taken when his son died. What does fucking Alicent want? It doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, oh, I need to kill him. You know, like, you think you can have it all. Well, you've got to make sacrifices. A son for a son. Like, son for a son. I mean, Jaehaerys already died. What are you fucking talking about? But like, outside of Jaehaerys, like, there's the fucking wall. There's exile. There's a million fucking options. There's being a fucking cupbearer. There's, you know, like, there are a million things you can do besides having the fucking king beheaded.
Right, and this is what I've been saying all season, is that their intention is to try and do all these convoluted plot lines to get these people back in the same room together, because, again, the main series is about these people, Rhaenyra, Alicent, and Daemon, and it's just unfortunate that one of those people has nothing going on throughout the entirety of this war, so it's always mental gymnastics in writing to get them back together when they could use the screen time elsewhere. It's the symbolism people are pushing, and I understand it that they like these two characters, but at the same time, sometimes it just drags it down.
Those scrolls don't represent history. Those scrolls represented all of the family lineages where she was searching for dragon seeds. Like, that doesn't fucking mean history. Who would fucking interpret that? Like, we were told specifically what those scrolls were. They were family lineages for her to search for dragon seeds. And Alicent looking out at the horizon. What does that fucking mean? That she's somehow free? She's not fucking free. She's got all these fucking kids. She's got all these fucking kids that she should theoretically want to somehow save. But apparently she fucking never liked any of her kids, except for Helaena, apparently. Like, what the fuck? I mean, this is a woman who was so upset that Aemond lost his eye that she physically attacked Rhaenyra with a dagger. Right? And now she's just willing to allow Aegon to be killed, and presumably Aemond too, because I don't understand how Aemond lives in this situation either. And somehow she's free. What? This is just the sloppiest jumble of shit. Like, don't give me like a pretty directed shot where you've put a character front and center with a nice silhouette at fucking golden hour or whatever. I don't fucking care. Like, that's not golden hour, but yeah, but I don't fucking care. There's no fucking symbolism here. There's no parallel between these characters. These characters aren't even paralleled. Like, how is there any similarity between these two situations? Like, Rhaenyra, like preparing for battle, preparing to take King's Landing, and Alicent, what? Preparing to surrender King's Landing and allow her children to be executed? Like, what's the parallel other than the fact that these two people are friends? Are they? And they're not friends again, and they're not really enemies. So, like, what the fuck? Like, what are you fucking saying? I mean, yeah, it's beautiful shots. Doesn't mean shit. It just doesn't mean shit. Like, the Alicent story is so jumbled and ridiculous. And in many ways, it's the source material's fault. Like, Alicent was given nothing to do in the source material. Rhaenyra was given nothing to do in the source material. They did a better job with Rhaenyra because they were able to take a lot of actions of other characters and give them to Rhaenyra. Like the sowing of the seeds was taken from Jace and given to Rhaenyra. But man, the three main characters, Rhaenyra, Alicent, and Daemon, all had their stories absolutely just bungled. Absolutely bungled.
Rhaenyra, yeah, it's funny too, because we've been complaining all season that she needs to shit or get off the pot. She needs to do something. And she finally starts doing stuff in the last 2 episodes. So
she does, and she I mean, I don't, she becomes pretty fucking evil, like pretty fast, but no one seems to notice it. And she's still sitting there having conversations with Mysaria about saving the small folk and saving and things like that. She fucking fed 100 people to dragons last episode. And in this episode, she convinced her best friend to allow her to execute her son. Am I supposed to like this character?
Well, that's the other thing is Mysaria. I wonder how we're going to get brothel queens because Alicent and Rhaenyra clearly have somewhat of a friendship still happening right now, kinda, somewhat so salvaging. My assumption here is going to be that Rhaenyra next season is going to be super pissed that Aegon is gone, and that was the deal, and Alicent can't find him, and therefore it's going to go right back to them being enemies again. But at the same time, I don't think this current version of Rhaenyra would even think of doing brothel queens.
Are you talking about the tax policies?
No, brothel queens is the idea that Mysaria puts forward about punishing. Punishing
Alicent and Helaena by making them sex workers, or forcing them into sex slavery. Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah. There's no way they're going to do that.
It's still a rumor. It's still like a rumor. We don't know if it really happened or not, but I can't see this version of the show doing anything like that. Because Rhaenyra and Mysaria, in the books, they're out of their minds. But here, Mysaria seems a bit more focused on the plight of the small folk.
Considering that Mysaria, part of her character was suffering the rapes of her father, that she would subject Alicent and Helaena to that. I mean, it's a pretty cruel and evil idea. Yeah. But
on the topic of Mysaria, I wanted to bring up the thing that me and Trey talked about in the last podcast, is because her whole shtick this season, or for this character, seems to be she wants to uplift the small folk. She wants to bring down the elites and uplift the small folk in some type of way. That seems to be her whole thing. And I hope to God, while it will be a really cool storyline that Mysaria's whole thing is to trick Rhaenyra into destroying the Targaryen legacy, their hold on power forever by getting rid of the dragons, that would be cool. But at the same time, I don't know if I want that from that character. That she's a super secret agent hell-bent on uplifting the small folk and bringing down the elites in power.
Here's the thing: is that idea is far too clever, and would require like it would require a long season arc of like planning to execute it all. Something the writers are incapable of doing.
Well, I don't know about that, because that's kind of what happened, right? Mysaria has been in Rhaenyra's ear the entire time. A lot of people were saying how they did not see the Mysaria-Rhaenyra kiss coming. I completely did, because if you think about it...
it's also, are they going to mention it again? Did it just happen? And then, because after that kiss, there was no romance after. Are they just ever going to address that? It was just a shocker, like for that one moment.
Well...
Do you think that...
Maybe they might, but at the same time, Larys being a complete and utter creep last season is completely gone.
Gone.
Aegon being a complete and utter piece of shit, that's completely gone. So
right. Aegon completely changed his personality, because he was a rapist who liked child fights in season 1, and in season 2 he's someone who likes the small folk and is like feels useless and then is in trauma because he's been hurt. Larys is a guy who was totally in defeat and masturbating to Alicent, and this season he's into attaching himself to Aegon and then legitimately feeling sympathy for Aegon and Aegon's wounds. Every character just seems to is a completely new character, like in the season. Sometimes several times over.
Well, that's what I was saying. In regards to Mysaria, I saw the kiss coming a mile away, because Rhaenyra's counselors keep going against her, and they have every right to, because she is just way too hesitant on doing anything. Mysaria is the only one that's been gassing her up a little bit, so it makes utter sense to me that, of course, Rhaenyra would be into Mysaria. Mysaria is the only person that is actively trying to compliment her and cheer her on, and that, to me, that makes sense, of course, 100%. But no, Mysaria, it's a theory going on in the community right now that Mysaria's got some plan here to remove the Targaryens from power or lower their power.
The problem is those fan theories are smarter than the writers right now. I'm completely like, there's so many dropped plots and dropped ideas that throughout the show that it's just becoming a joke to me now. Like, remember how at the beginning of season 1, like the Maester was definitely like teaming up with Otto in a conspiracy, and then given those looks,
recall that. Can you remind me?
Well, do you remember Maester, the one before Orwyle, the old white guy? I forget which name, because they merged him with a couple characters, but he gives Otto these like knowing looks at different times, because it's very clear that he's in on the conspiracy to try to change the heir. And things like that. And you've got all these guys, these maesters working on Viserys, and it just seems creepy because you wonder if like they're poisoning him. Okay. All of that, like maester conspiracy stuff was definitely there, and there was zero of it. None of it this season.
So
completely, utterly gone.
Let me throw some curveballs your way. First and foremost, you have to know at this point, a lot of people are going to say you're biased here because this is your maester conspiracy and you want it to be true.
Maybe, but like, those looks that were made, like, you know,
I agree with you, but I think you're using the wrong evidence. I think that's a good breadcrumb, but I think the major evidence you should be looking at is instead episode 4.
I think that's Melos. Melos is a combination of Melos and Runketer, but like Melos made those looks, and there's definitely like when I talk to casuals. Like, they all thought that he was getting poisoned by the maesters.
Right. There was some type of conspiracy, but I think the real evidence that you should really be looking at is either episode 4 or 5. I forget which one. The scene Otto has with young Alicent when they're in the rain, where Otto literally tells Alicent, "The king will die soon." And that's when you need to make your move. How do you know that? So I see what you're saying with the maester conspiracy, but I would like to use that. I would throw that bit of evidence in there as well.
Sure. And now there's not a hint. There is no hint of maester conspiracy with Orwyle. Orwyle is played everything straight. So Orwyle is completely different. Kristen Cole, who season 1 was all about being super angry and bitter at Rhaenyra. This season he's just PTSD. Completely different character.
Well, that's the second half. That's his second half story is PTSD. The first half, I believe he calls her the bitch queen at one point, and no, he's still super.
But he's more about banging Alicent. It's more about him banging Alicent than it is about him being bitter about Rhaenyra. You know, he's got a little bit there, but then the rest of the season he's just PTSD. Larys we already talked about. He's completely different. You know, like, yes, he creepily executes some people at the beginning of the season, but he has none of the creepy attachment to Alicent. It's completely, utterly gone. No foot fetish, no masturbating, is 100% on board with Aegon in an almost fatherly role. There's just, I'm trying, like, Rhaenyra all over the map. Like, she's cruel one episode, she's timid one episode, then she's forceful the next episode, then she's cruel the next episode, then she's back to being timid. And Jace, like, he's all feeling that he's not contributing and insecure about his position, and then he's off making bold decisions. He's at the wall and then he's at the twins, and then he's coming up with the dragon seed idea, which he then hates immediately after coming up with it.
I think they explained the Jace did not liking the dragon seed stuff because when he mentioned and Rhaenyra also backs it up. When he mentioned the idea of putting other people who are not Targaryens on dragons, he's talking about the Highborn. And even Rhaenyra says it to Mysaria. She says, well, there's an ancient fealty there, some honor, by having some of the houses attempt to claim a dragon. But in regards to peasants who have no loyalty to anybody, then that's a problem for Jace.
I mean, they tried to explain it. I didn't really buy it. Considering he was the one that was like, haha, I've got this idea. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh, boo-hoo, I don't like this. Maybe in 40 years somebody's gonna question my claim. Like, come on. Like, stop pouting. You're in a desperate war situation. You know you're in a desperate situation. I just didn't buy it. Baela walking around doing, like, what is Baela doing this whole season? So, like, she did some recon and then she refused dragons. She refused Driftmark. Like nobody had any sort of consistent arc the entire season. Everyone was just treading water.
That's 110% not true. Corlys filmed 95% of his scenes on the docks. That's pretty consistent.
It was consistent in that he kept talking to Alan. Talking to Alan over and over again. I suppose.
Which, by the way, that was a great scene. Alan actually giving him some shit for not being there when he was growing up, which is something we haven't really seen with bastards in the show. Jon Snow, despite Catelyn hating the shit out of him, he was well-fed. He liked his dad. He liked his dad. He was somewhat educated. Ramsay was even Castellan of the Dreadfort. So he had, some measure of respect there from people despite being a bastard. Alan had to claw his way up. So we haven't seen stuff like that before.
Yeah. Yeah. And sadly, we didn't really get any personality from Adam. We got a lot of Hugh. We got a lot of Ulf.
Adam, though, my God, dude, I didn't know who Clinton Liberty was before he got the role, but the guy is really growing on me, specifically because he has this, like, I'm happy to be here smile. It's a very friendly smile.
He's very charming. Mm-hmm. He's very, very charming, and he does a lot with the fact that they gave him, fucking 3 scenes? Like, they gave Alan, for some reason, twice as many scenes, but they gave Adam hardly any scenes, but he's very charming. I mean, he did a lot with what they gave him. I wish they would have given him more. But
it works even better if you've seen some of the behind the scenes stuff he's been posting, especially I think on his Instagram, where he literally sought out every single actor and actress and took a picture with him, and he has, like, the biggest smile, and it really bleeds into his character. So I just really like him.
He is he's a very charming guy. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. I just like, looking back on the season, I don't know.
Looking back on the season, the first half was great. We had a really good opening episode. A lot of people didn't like the blood and cheese stuff. It was fine, for me at least, but I understand people's complaints. And then episode 2, in my opinion, and I think George commented on this as well, it's one of the best episodes in the entire franchise. Sure. With all those character interactions. Episode 3 sets up episode 4 very nicely, and that first half was great. And then it falters after that.
After episode 4, everything kind of falters. Like, because that first half of the season, we really felt things were building somewhere, especially with Daemon. We thought that that Aegon's situation might be really interesting on how it changes, Alicent and a small council and Aemond and stuff like that. But Aemond just kind of becomes a cartoon villain, and everybody else acts really inconsistent, and it ends just very illogically. Everybody acting all weird.
Well, I think we have finally a reason for this. So, this is something a fellow YouTuber, Dragon Demands, posted a while ago, and Elio Garcia from Westeros.org chimes in, and he said, and I'm quoting him here, "It was supposed to be a 10-episode season. A month before filming, after 8 months of writing, HBO told them to cut the episodes. Then the writer's strike started 3 months later, so the writers couldn't work during filming to reorganize things." HBO shot themselves in the foot with people who are bothered by this aspect of the season. So here's the thing. Ryan Condal has consistently come out and said that the writer's strike did not affect the scripts because they were already done, but I guess that wasn't the complete truth, because technically they were done, but at the same time, I guess it was hard for them to rearrange things, which, okay,
can you really imagine that they would have, I don't know, that if this were episode 8 of a 10 episode season that they would have had. The montage obviously was added, but like Rhaenyra and Alicent meeting again, do you think that would have really been the same? You know?
I don't know. I honestly, I do have an idea of where it would end. But before we get there, Elio clearly has some insight into this, and I've been saying this all fucking season. I've been saying this for the last several years. HBO has nothing, absolutely nothing, and there it is. David Zaslav, I think the CEO's name is absolutely dog shit. He's been cutting things left and right, and I don't know what's going on with HBO. I don't know why they would...
Yeah, they really fucked things up, yeah.
They really have been... They've been canceling shows left and right, making cuts here and there. I don't know if all this money is going towards his pocketbook, or maybe it's all going towards creating Harry Potter. I have no idea, because remember, that's something coming down the pipeline, the Harry Potter TV show. Before we wrap up the episode, I wanted to talk about some of the things I really liked. Thailand in Essos. I did not expect to like it. I kind of wish that Aegon had sent Thailand to Essos in episode 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And then the entire season is him like going through these weird trials to gain their respect. Every other episode here and there, you have like, episode 4.
Yeah.
He starts the trials. 5, he's like mud wrestling. 6, he's trying to do a singing thing to woo him over. Maybe 7, we don't see him, and in 8, he appears all of a sudden at the end of the montage, having fully won them over, and because that was a very epic scene on him on the boats.
You're right that Thailand was a hell of a lot more fun. Was a hell of a lot of fun. I liked it a lot, and you're right that like rather than having Corlys make another trip to the docks, like have a trial of Thailand, or Thailand's antics in Essos would have just been hilarious. Have him up and down and whatever. I think it would have been great. You're right.
It's something that House of the Dragon has been missing, is the humor from Game of Thrones. I mean, I'm not saying we should make this into a comedy show, but the humor every now and then, it's all doom and gloom all the time, 24/7 with the show. But humor every now and then, I wouldn't mind. One example is people really liked Ulf. I thought he was annoying, but what did you think of Ulf?
He's fine. I mean, it all depends on where they go with it. Like I say, if they eventually have it where Ulf is the one who stays loyal and Hugh is the one that betrays everybody, I think that would be a neat little subversion of expectations. But if they have Ulf be the asshole in the end and Hugh be the good guy at the end, I think it'd be not as fun. But because you want a character to have a journey, to change over time. And so I think having Ulf like change, like start off as this like, this roguish character, and then to suddenly become like a proper knight would be interesting. But we'll see. We'll see.
Would be a nice subversion of expectations. But no, Hugh for the most part, Hugh is pretty awesome, and they're definitely setting up his whole thing by having his family go to Tumbleton. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So something's definitely going to happen at Tumbleton with Hugh's family. So. And
by the way, I do agree with you that like that Daemon scene where he swears fealty to Rhaenyra, you've been waiting for that all season. But come on, man! Like,
I mean, we were talking about it the whole season, like of where we thought Daemon was going. His realizing that he needs to support Rhaenyra.
So good.
And we knew that was coming. We didn't think it was going to happen this early, and we certainly thought it was going to be his choice rather than a prophecy. But I mean, you're talking the scene, but you're saying the scene in isolation is still a pretty nice scene visually.
Oh yeah. Oh god, yeah. It's like it was great.
I thought that it was good. I think they should have leaned into the parallels to the Council of 101 a little more. Because like the show begins with the Council of 101 and like Viserys like up on that stage like getting declared king. Like I think they could have had Rhaenyra up there instead. And like how they brought in the chest to announce who it is, like have Daemon do the walk. Like had they just put Rhaenyra on the other end of the hall, it would have made a nice little parallel.
That's kind of what they did though, right? Rhaenyra is at the very entrance. It's the opposite of where
she
Daenerys is.
But it's not filmed. It's not filmed quite similar enough for people to make the connection.
You made the
like
connection.
certainly I thought about it, but like I'm saying for the average person to be like, oh right, you know, they could have put her at the head of the hall rather than the foot of the hall. They could have like filmed it in a similar fashion where you know have Daemon walking up in the same way the box did and stuff like that. But whatever, it's fine. It's fine.
Before I let you go, I did want to ask you one question. I asked this question in my review video. I'm going to ask you this right now because you mentioned this earlier. My question is, and I'm just going to read, do you mind if I just read to you what I wrote for this section of my review video? My question is, and I asked this to the audience too, guys, feel free to chime in. How long is it until this fandom starts to do a complete 180 and forgive Dave and Dan for fumbling the finishing line with season 8 and how season 8 was an unrated masterpiece? The reason I say this is because you guys hated Dave and Dan, you hated the White Walker stuff after how badly it ended, and you hated Bran's personality shift, but slowly I'm seeing a change here because people keep defending that White Walker vision, even though it links back to one of the weakest storylines in Game of Thrones. People are defending Helena's Bran 9000 personality, even though nobody liked it. Like, and I keep seeing calls for Dave and Dan to return. I saw this. You remember this. I saw this after the end of the first episode with Blood and Cheese. It's still in my comment section. I'm sure it's in yours as well. People asking for Dave and Dan to come back. My question is, how long as a fandom do we turn into the Star Wars fandom? Because 15 years ago, the prequels...
Like how all of a sudden people like the prequels?
Yeah, 15 years ago, everybody hated the prequels. Now, oh my god, an underrated masterpiece. 15 years ago, there were songs about how George Lucas raped your childhood, and now he's a god amongst men. How long until we do a 180 and Dave and Dan are amazing and season 8 was underrated? How long?
So I think there's some important differences between the Star Wars situation and Game of Thrones. Like I do admit that there has been some softening on Dan and Dave. I don't think people are at the point where they think season 8 is good, but they're softening on Dan and Dave in that they are remembering that seasons 1 to 3 were really fantastic and Dan and Dave did that. And I think a lot of people saw Three Body Problem and were like, oh, this isn't half bad. I guess Dan and Dave actually can do stuff. So there is a little bit of softening, but there's a huge difference though, in that the prequels for Star Wars are kids' movies. And so they're fed to a bunch of impressionable people who feel nostalgic for these products. Okay. And that's very different from Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is not fed to children who then have like nostalgia for it. And so
you sure? Because this fandom acts like fucking kids sometimes, but continue.
Yeah, but you know, we can compare it. There are a lot of shows that ended poorly and they're just forgotten. Like I say, Battlestar. And you know, I know you didn't watch it when it was on, but Battlestar was the fucking thing, man. Mm-hmm. It had captured the zeitgeist and it disappointed everybody. Now, there was a follow-up series, but it only went one season. It certainly didn't get the viewership of House of the Dragon and things like this. So, you know, House of the Dragon might be pulling up Game of Thrones like in people's minds, but you'll not have the same forgiving nature as with the prequels, because it's not, these aren't fed to kids who are impressionable, who are going to like say something's good when it's a shit movie, you know?
I don't know, man. I keep seeing a lot of people defend this last episode. A lot of people defend a lot of these decisions.
No, I mean, I only see it with art related to like youth and children. And I'm talking like, look, there's a lot of like, for instance, The Breakfast Club is not that fucking good of a movie, but everybody watched it as kids. And so they're like, oh, The Breakfast Club is this incredible movie. You know, the prequels, Return of the Jedi, are not good movies, but you watch them as kids. So you're like, oh, you've got this affinity. There's a bunch of movies in my mind like this too, like Secret of Nim and The Last Unicorn and stuff like this. Even The Neverending Story. They're not that fucking good. They don't really hold up, but you remember them as great because they were fed to you as kids. Okay, so it's different. So no, we're never going to get to the point where season 8 is forgiven. No. Just like it didn't happen with Battlestar. No one's sitting there saying the end of Battlestar was any good. It wasn't. But we also live at this really weird time where social media, Twitter, YouTube, is filled with people that fake love and fake hate shit.
It's true.
And so like now you can't even trust opinions because, I mean, media opinions are a lot like scrolling through like Amazon reviews. And you're like, do I look at the 5-star reviews because they're all fake? And do I look at the 0-star reviews because they're all fake? And so like what generally speaking, like a lot of times when I'm going through those reviews, I look at like the 4-star reviews, the 3-star reviews. Like they're so much more useful. Because they're real.
What were we talking about in regards to YouTubers getting screeners? Because look, I'm going to be very real with you guys. This is not aimed at any one YouTuber in specific, but I do feel bad for YouTubers who get screeners. I feel bad and I'm envious. Envious because I would love to get those screeners ahead of time and work on my episode review. However, here's the other side of that coin. You can't be brutally honest because then they'll stop sending you stuff. We talked about this on the stream with Star Wars YouTuber Eckhart's Ladder. He was fairly harsh about the ending of Ahsoka, and then when the next Star Wars property came out, he did not get invited for screeners on that.
Exactly.
So
So we live in this world now where people's opinions aren't their opinions. It's fucking crazy. And like I say, it's not even just YouTube. Like I say, it's Amazon reviews, and like I say, like weird people that even when they're not even getting any money, they just want their Twitter account to be huge, and so they post just like, I don't know, like positive stuff for the sake of it, just to get followers on Twitter. Like I don't even know some of the motivation, but there's just weird people that only take extremist positions. Something is either the best thing ever or the worst thing ever. And you're no longer hearing like honest, this is it's okay. No, it's kind of bad. And this is why, it's everything's the best or the worst. So I don't trust that like people are really coming around on D&D. Like, I don't think that's happening.
I hope you're right. And I hope we don't have to have this conversation again in the near future because... boy. I know you don't read your comment section as often as I do, but oh my god. Oh my god. Blood and Cheese was so bad. Dave and Dan would have done... Oh my god. Dude, I was like, are you serious? Are we really... Because I do not want to be like I do not want to be part of this fandom that's slowly becoming like the Star Wars fandom.
I mean, Dave and Dan would have had Blood and Cheese like sit and stare at each other for 3 minutes without any dialogue, and then the kid is killed. Like, that's what would have happened. Like, remember late season Dan and Dave? Just so many scenes of people just like staring at each other awkwardly, and that was the joke. Mm-hmm. Like Tyrion sitting in Marine, sitting across from Grey Worm and Missandei, like awkwardly sitting there, nothing to say.
Well, that's when Dave and Dan didn't have any material. But with material...
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to say.
It's hard to say. Any other nice things about this episode? I want to be as balanced as possible because...
Look, as I say, beautifully directed. The montage was great. I love the Thailand stuff. The scene, this like I say, stuff looks beautiful. It's well acted. It's it's just... I have a serious problem with it contradicting how people are acting and events in the very previous episode.
I agree. I can't blame the writers too much for being given so little with HBO coming in and meddling, but at the same time, I can blame them for the Helaena thing, for the Daemon Vision thing, and always trying to insert Alicent and Rhaenyra in the same scene. Those are the things I have an issue with, but I agree with you. Shot beautifully. Thailand was great. I love character interactions. Alan and Corlys were really good. Bela and Jace are always great together. I quite enjoy that. Daemon and Rhaenyra. That scene was fucking awesome. It's a shame it always has to come back to these characters always needing to like just be there specifically. So do you mind if we wrap it up here?
Sounds good.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us. As always, we'll see you all next time. Have a good one.